Good evening. This is the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee meeting, Tuesday, March 19th, 2024, in Council Chamber, City Hall. Call to order. Identify potential conflicts of interest. I see none. Any citizens' comments? Citizens' comments? Citizens' comments? I see none. Consent agenda, minutes of March 5th, 2024 meeting, bills and payroll. Motion by...
I'll move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Eigel, second by Ms. Tompkins. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We did not remove any items from the consent agenda. Number 6, request to recommend council approval to refill one vacant firefighter paramedic position, presented by Jody Clements, interim fire chief.
Hello, everyone. The fire department received a resignation letter from firefighter paramedic Ryan Dunn. His final working day will be March 29th. Ryan was with the Marshfield Fire and Rescue for 5 years. A request to fill his position was made to the Fire and Police Commission on March 14th and was approved to move to the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee for consideration and approval to recommend Common Council approval. Staff recommends the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee recommend approval of the hiring of firefighter paramedic for the approval by the Common Council. I would ask for your approval, please.
I move to approve the filling of the firefighter paramedic position.
I'll second.
Motion by Tompkins, second by Rigel. Any questions? Mr. Rigel.
I did have one, just very brief one. Do we know why he resigned by any chance?
In his exit interview, basically what he told me was that's what would be best for his family.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions? Say we have a motion and a second. Mr. Maynard? Yep. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Request to recommend council approval to refill 2 vacant police officer positions, presented by Jody Garrett, police chief.
Okay, thank you. When the budget passed this year, we were permitted to hire an officer, but was asked to hold off until May. The goal of putting off that hiring process was to offset the unforeseen costs that we have, I believe, from the utility pilot. And the police department's portion of that offset was expected to be about $35,000 off the general fund. We were able to offset more than that already. We have approved finally to hire a record specialist. We were approved to hire a record specialist back in January. The hiring process took longer than I'd anticipated, and so we've been working without one, and hopefully we'll have one start first week of April. We have a person selected. So that saved us about a quarter of wage and benefits there. We also left on the law enforcement side, we left the opening in the detective bureau, as you remember, to better control over time, and also the detectives make more money. So we were able to offset a little bit more just by making that move as well. We're already north of $49,000 that we've saved through the course of the year just through wage and benefits. We've also endured a couple of unforeseen issues. We had an officer leave in February, and also we have a detective that just announced that he's going to be moving to the private sector, which is anticipated to be off the books in the middle of April. So our one position that is open is quickly turning into 3. The hiring process is extremely competitive right now. We do have 2 potential applicants that are interested in working for our department. They are in the academy currently. We have already interviewed, and we're going through the vetting of these 2 officers to see if we can catch them before someone else does, honestly. However, since we were only approved to hire in May, it's necessary for me to come back and approach this board to ask for permission to move ahead with that hiring process. If we do hire them while they're still in the academy, per our union contract, we would pay them only 80% of the starting rate, so there would be a continual savings there. Then I would come back after our officer goes to the detective, the private sector, I would come back again for that third position. So basically, I would be hiring for the two vacant positions that we have in the department right now. This has been approved by the PFC at our last meeting, and I look for your approval tonight.
I move to approve the filling of 2 police officer positions.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Ms. Tompkins, second by Mr. Rigel. Any questions? Mr. Rigel.
Just briefly here, and sorry, my brain is probably mush today, so if it's a dumb question, I apologize. But just to confirm that we were down 1 officer going into the year. We were planning on hiring it in May. Then we had 2, what do you want to call it, people leaving the department. So now we have 3 vacancies. We're filling 2 right now. And then once that retirement takes effect, we're leaving to the private sector. In mid-April, we'll be seeing another request for a 3rd person. So essentially the net is going to be what we anticipated. There isn't an increase in...
We're not increasing numbers.
Right, okay, perfect. That's all I need to know. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Any other questions? With none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Request to recommend council approval for the addition of a 3rd K-9 officer presented by Jody Garrett, Police Chief.
Okay, currently our department has 2 dual-purpose canines. Dual-purpose just means that they can be used in sniffing, our detection of evidence, and also for the protection or apprehension of people. The dogs department they benefit our department and our city in many ways. They assist in missing person cases, building searches, discarded are people who try to hide evidence from us. The biggest advantage, however, is in drug enforcement. So our dogs are trained to detect the odor of illegal narcotics, which allows us the better possibility of establishing probable cause to either search or to request a search warrant. Excuse me. Okay, so the cost of the K9, nearly all the startup costs is covered with our K9 fund. The K9 fund is mostly donated by our citizens, and also we do have some fundraisers that help us build that fund, and it's a pretty healthy number at this point. So most of our drugs are found during patrol from our patrol officers. So the value of having our dogs on patrol really increases our chances of finding illegal drugs. Currently, we have, with the 2 canines, we have 4 patrol shifts, so we're really only able to staff half of our patrol division with a canine. If we're approved to move forward with this, we would be able to purchase the canine likely in September, so that would offset some of the costs until then. We are exposed to a little bit of increase in cost because of the difference in pay scales. So depending on who we promote would determine how much that pay scale is. If we promoted someone who has just completed their probationary period, which is probably unlikely, we would be exposed to somewhere around $13,500 in a year's time. If we found someone who is at the top of the pay scale, it's closer to about $1,700 or $1,800. But that exposure is there. We have enough in our budget to cover that this year, but moving forward, we would have to budget for that amount. This has been approved by the Police and Fire Commission as well, and I urge you to allow me to add another dog to our division.
What's your pleasure?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Wagner,
I'll second.
second by Mr. Rigel. Any questions? Mr. Rigel?
Thank you. Like I said earlier, I might have had a long day, so bear with me here, just trying to do the math here. So what we're looking at here is worst case scenario, we're going to be over budget this year by about, what was that, you said 15,000 if I recall correctly? About
13,400.
13,400.
But that's in a year's time.
Okay.
We're only looking at about 3 months, possibly.
Okay, so then this year we're looking at about a fourth of that 13,400 would be over that. And then as you had said previously, we're doing pretty well as far as staying under budget. So it really wouldn't have much of an impact in 2024. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think our budget's fine for this year. We would have to budget moving forward, though.
Right, and I guess, and that's kind of my concern coming from that. And it's not that there's any opposition from me per se of getting a 3rd canine dog, but the bigger concern is that right now we're walking into 2025. And right now we're, just going into this year, we already knew we're having a deficit of 340,000 going into next year, which is going to mean there's going to be a lot of gnarly decisions to make as far as cutting whatever it may be. And I'd be remiss if I didn't do this to anyone asking to increase their funding whatsoever, of saying, okay, how do we anticipate how we budget for that? And if we were just short or a deficit of 50 grand or something like that, I'm kind of going, okay, we can probably find that somewhere. But when we've got anywhere from 300,000 to 600,000, every little bit adds up. So I guess what I'm getting at is how in future years, we're looking at, once again, like you said, at 13.4 roughly. Worst case scenario, it could be 1,000, and then I'm all wet and we have nothing to do here. It's negligible. But thinking worst case scenario, is there, how do we address that? Is that something that we should just wait until we as a council, get further into looking at the budget for 2025?
I think that, what I'm doing is playing out the worst case scenario, but probably the most unlikely one. The most likely is that it's going to be far less than that 13, because I don't see us promoting someone to a canine after only being here a year. There's a lot of responsibility. And one thing I also want to bring out is that as I said, a lot of this program is funded through donations and through our own fundraisers. Our canine handlers are constantly attending events and raising money for the program. So it really, in a lot of ways, it pays for itself. That's not even counting the things that we find on the street, or counting the money that we find on the street that also at times comes back too.
And I think you kind of beat me to my next question, then. Okay. So with that funding for fundraisers, donations, what is that exactly used for? Forgive my ignorance here. Is that used for salary, just training?
No, that covers all of our equipment, our training, even everything down to dog food has been covered out of there. Our department really doesn't budget a lot for the daily use. We use that canine fund to do that. We buy equipment with it. It offsets our costs.
Okay, so basically all that's coming from non-general fund sources, except for the salary of the promoted canine officer. Is that correct?
The lion's share of it comes through there. We still, we buy a vehicle through CIP. We budget those sorts of things. The pay scale, all of that is budgeted through our personnel costs. But our equipment, most of the care for the dog is either donated through vets, or we have people that donate food. We have the fundraisers. We have donations. It's amazing. So,
that's great to know. I didn't know that. So, Thank you. Yeah. And then I guess once again, forgive me just for asking just very basic level questions. But the point of this is to make sure that there's a transition between when Rika retires, which we anticipate probably about a year-ish time, more or less.
Well, Rika's health is still pretty good, even though she's starting to get up in age. We're hoping to maintain the 3-dog level. It's been about 10 years since we've added to the second dog. And it's been a goal a lot of times because of the 4 patrol shifts. In time, we'd love to have one on each shift so that no matter who's working, they would have access to a dog. But it takes time to build the funds to do that. So the way our donations have worked and the way that it's grown throughout the years, it took us about this long to where we feel comfortable that we could purchase the 3rd dog now and still have it timed in to where the other 2 are healthy enough so we don't have to turn around and replace that dog. It's more of a rotation process, our best chance at a rotation process.
Okay, so we'd be increasing the number of canine units to a 3rd one, and then when Rika does retire, then at that point we'd be looking to he's saying that sounds bad, but replace or get another canine in that position too. So then let's assume that finances are a non-issue, which I know is a massive assumption. When do you would you ideally like that 4th canine officer tomorrow, if at all possible?
No,
perfect world. Okay.
In a perfect world. Well, we still have to select somebody. We don't even know who's interested in becoming the next canine officer. So we would still have to run a process through that. And that's not one that's taken lightly because there's a lot of additional stuff that you have to be prepared for. It affects your family. It affects your work schedule. It affects a lot of different things. So we make sure that we find somebody that's going to fit that mold well too. And that takes time. We can't even get into a school until September. So, and that's not something that I want to find a different open school. The kennel that we go to has been the one that we've had all of our dogs through, and they've been outstanding. And so I'm picky as to how we do that.
Oh, and I appreciate that because it's not willy-nilly, let's do something, but no, there's a good thought process behind it. So I guess this next one I just probably direct to Steve then. I know I voted against it as far as pushing back the first budget meeting because I wanted it earlier rather than later. What, and I know that we're getting ahead of this, but this is the reason I brought this up in January as far as our budget for 25, because frankly, I'm petrified of the decision we have to make. It's going to be ugly across the board. And I know this is very nasty and like it's very early on, but do we feel like we can come up with that? And once again, I'm talking worst case scenario, and and the police chief has said it's not likely that. So I know that, but realistically, do you think we come up with that 13.4 if need be? Like I said, unlikely, but let's talk worst case scenario.
Yeah, I mean, what we're going to talk about on April 9th is going to be pretty high level in terms of the broader playing field. Obviously, any expenses that are added to the picture for 2025 is going to make it a little bit more challenging. We're not talking about a massive amount here based upon what the chief is telling you, the donated funds and all those kind of things that come into the picture. It's noteworthy. When you make this decision, which I think would be a good one, you have to take into account that that's another small chunk of change that we're going to have to deal with for 2025. It's not a deal breaker in terms of where we're going. We've got some broader decisions to make when we start getting serious in this later spring.
Right, and I think that's exactly my point. Is that I'm in favor of it in general. I'm concerned about the cost, despite the fact that we're talking a very small number. We're talking 5 figures here. You do that across a bunch of departments, it adds up pretty fast, and we're looking at another 100K on there. Not saying that this is dispositive of this particular request, but can we find, is that something that's achievable, you think? Because right now I'm looking at this going, worst case scenario, we may be looking at $700,000 deficit potentially, if not more. That's a huge amount to come up with. Can we find that other 13.4 in there if we need to find it?
Well, and one of the people I'll be looking to probably is Jody to see if he can be part of it, to try and fill that gap. But I don't mean to be flippant. 13,000 plus 13,000. I mean, it adds up to money. In a real sense. I'm just not overly troubled at this point by this request. But I get where you're going, and I get what you're saying that if these can add up, and we can be looking at a more difficult position as we head toward the fall. But I think we can find a way to make this up. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't have anything in mind right now. If you're asking what I would cut or what I would, what I would change, but
is it a reasonable thing to come up with that money if we needed to? Once again, like you said, it's not a small amount, but you add that up across numerous events, that becomes a big amount. And so it's one of those things that I want to make sure. Except what I don't want to have happen is say yes, let's go for it, and then 6 months from now we're going, oops,
no, I know,
we have to go back. If we're going to do this, and if we're going through the very well-founded decisions of doing this, which they've shown that they have been doing, the police department that is, we should at least repay them with the same due diligence of making sure that we're not playing games with them either. That's my concern. I just want to make sure that this runs smoothly. There aren't any hiccups. There aren't any issues. As I said,
I believe wholeheartedly in the public safety purpose of what Chief Goering is bringing forward, but I totally get your challenge. And believe me, the conversation we're going to have starting on the 9th of April will be serious, and we'll make sure that we're dealing with it. I look forward to the conversation. I think Jennifer does too, getting it started earlier so we can start planning on what it's going to take to make the picture work overall for 2025.
Okay. I think I'm done bothering people.
You're fine.
Any other questions? So we have a motion by Mr. Wagner, a second by Mr. Rigel to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Request to recommend council approval of a request for proposal for administrative services related to the city's CDBG RLF housing program, presented by Carrie Edmondson, Assistant City Administrator, Community Development Director.
Thank you, Vice Chair Varsho. Good evening, Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee members. This item before you is to put out an RFP for administrative services for the CDBG Housing Rehabilitation Revolving Loan Fund Program. We entered into a contract in 2019 with Juneau County Housing Authority, and they have let us know that they'll be dissolving that contract. And so we're seeking administrative services for the program. So this program is available to LMI rental units and owner-occupied units for rehabilitation services. The program is very beneficial to the city, including reduction, elimination of blight and structural deterioration, elimination of housing conditions that are detrimental to public health, safety, and welfare, and reduces the need to, quite honestly, raise structures, which saves us money and time. It's quite labor intensive and cost intensive to do that. It also preserves affordable housing options for city residents, because oftentimes these are affordable units that are, on the verge of maybe not being livable. And this program enables structures to remain livable and affordable for residents. And so the memo outlines kind of the process and procedure, and then also the RFP that we would like to put out in April. Are there any questions?
Mr. Wagner.
Yeah, thank you, Carrie. As you know, this is a big concern of ours. I'm all in favor of extending this, but I think they're only talking about dealing with community development block grant monies. Can we run a parallel housing rehabilitation program out of here using the funds that have been realized from the closeout of TIF districts, things like that? We're looking for sources of funds, and we're also looking for the program. There are people who know how to run the program anyway, for providing low and moderate income housing in Marshfield. Can we parallel this with the other one?
So just to clarify, so what the other program being?
Well, the other program, we're going to have to name it, embed it, and grow it. But it's we have money that has been earmarked for workforce housing coming out of the TID, and that's can we run a program to run the TID at the same, or the TID money in the same way that this one is being run? And I'm losing my voice, so be sweet. Okay.
So the TIF district, so the ability to use housing within TIF districts is, there's a very specified process.
Excuse me, we're not going to use it in TIF districts.
Yeah.
We'll be able to use it citywide.
I think what he was talking about, and I'm not sure how much you and I have talked about this, maybe not at all, but when we close TIF District 5, we're going to go one more year out and get the increment, roughly $400,000 to $500,000 that we can put toward affordable housing in one of many forms. We've laid out a number of possibilities. You've seen maybe 10 to 12 things on that resolution. We haven't decided exactly how that'll play out yet. And so that's what we have to figure out first.
Well, that's what I want to figure out.
But yeah, but I guess what I'm saying is it may not be a parallel program to what we're dealing with right now in terms of the program that Juneau County's been administering. It depends how we decide to use that money. But we could do something similar if we wanted to.
I think it would be foolish to pass up this opportunity to do so. I mean,
you mean as part of this contract that we're going to talk about here?
You know, we've been beating this housing horse to death for like, 2 years, 3 years, something like that. And basically, we've come to recognize that it's not just new houses that are up for grabs. We could probably increase the affordability of houses by doing rehab. We could do that. And I mean, it's not magic. I just want to know if we can parallel it to a program that already exists and has an administrative structure.
Go ahead, Jay.
We can parallel that. So the program that Carrie is going out would like to go out for bids for administrative services is an established program whereby we grant loans to individuals who meet a specified criteria per that grant. Now, should we decide with the increment that we are going to gain and use for our affordable housing program, that can be a subset of the total program. So if somebody failed to meet the qualifications of CDBG, we could have a separate revolving loan program if that's what we chose to do with different criteria, or by some other name. We have listed out several things and options that are to be determined, but we don't have to choose one or the other.
And as long as we're not taking it off the table.
No.
I want it there.
Not at all.
And I want to be able to use.
Not at all. And just that you'll have other choices as to how they use those funds compared to what they do here. But absolutely, it's on the table.
Okay. And would we have to amend the contract if we run a parallel program or ask to do it? I mean, are they that different?
I guess.
No, I mean, this contract is an established program. It's a federal grant passed through state, through us. So it has its very own specified criteria. We wouldn't modify or change our administrative services for those people that we serve under that grant program. I mean, that's established.
Okay, you'll be happy.
If you're, are you asking though, Ed, just so I understand, are you asking if we could, whoever we pick in May, let's say, or whenever it is, if we could task them with also doing this other program we're creating, that would require some discussion with them. And yeah, I don't know if it's amending the contract or a new contract. That's not part of what Carrie's talking about bidding out. Is it possible? Absolutely.
I don't want to foreclose
The possibility.
the possibility, right?
Right. Agreed.
All right, before we have any more discussion, do we have a motion to approve? Mr. Ragel,
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
second. Any questions? Ms. Tompkins?
Carrie, thank you for this great information. And this RFP is very thorough, which is, I think it's going to be great for people who are trying to decide if they want to, bid for this. One of my questions is about marketing. So we've had the program for a while, and it seems that a lot of citizens maybe don't know about it. And because it's a revolving loan, sometimes it's very low what's actually in there, and it's increased a little bit recently. Do we have any sort of plan through this bid process for marketing, or is that something that we would need to do in-house? Have we thought through how we would let citizens know about this?
That's a really good point, because when I was kind of collecting information and doing research, we do have that brochure on our website, but it's kind of hidden. I mean, because I'm newer, I'm not sure how, what the promotion was, but I think that would definitely be something we could look at when we get requests and just kind of ask how they market the other contracts they have. And I agree to get it out in front of people. I think that's high priority.
And to add to that, I think our building inspection staff is going to be a key part of this too, because recently our balance has gone up. People, in the revolving loan fund, you don't pay anything until you either move or you pass away or whatever, and it comes through the estate. But we've been able to collect some lately, so we've got more in the kitty. And I'm talking to Pat Kilty. He'd love to have some things to hand out, because they deal with people all the time that are struggling to keep up their homes. They can't afford roofing and siding and so on. And having that brochure to say, look, here's an opportunity for you to get zero interest loan and not pay back for a long time. If they qualify, that might be really appealing. So word of mouth can be part of it too.
Mr. Ragel?
Just one brief question here, Ms. Edmondson. Do we know why they dissolved the contract with us?
I don't. Jennifer, do you know?
Juneau County had done a limited number of administrative services for people in our region, and they're just getting out of providing that service.
Okay, and just in case you guys are wondering why is this Cook asking these questions, I'm just trying to make sure that if we did something wrong, that we can remedy it. And if they're just getting out of it, perfect, move on, find someone else. So excellent, thank you.
Any more questions?
Just want to welcome Carrie to the podium.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
You're lucky. My voice is gone, so I'm done.
So I get off easy.
Okay.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Ragel and a second by Ms. Tompkins to approve. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Request to recommend council approval to set the installment payment plan interest rate for 2024 special assessments, presented by Jennifer Selinsky, Finance Director.
Oh, good evening. So section 13.96 of the city's municipal code addresses special assessments and states in part that special assessments are levied and collected in accordance with 660701 of the Wisconsin statute. Essentially, what this means is if there is a repair near your home and you are one of those property owners, the city assesses the value of that improvement to you, and the homeowner is allowed to pay that off over time, depending on the value of that improvement. Property owners have the option to pay in full or pay over time. And if they pay over time, the city assesses an interest rate associated with that borrowing process. And it is based on our most recent borrowing, which was incurred in order to perform the improvement in the first place. So with that, I am recommending a special assessment interest rate of 6%, which includes a 2% to cover the cost of administering the program. With that, I would recommend that be set using the installment plan for repayment.
What's your pleasure?
Can I ask a question?
Not yet.
I need a motion.
I'll move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Rigel,
Second.
second by Ms. Tompkins. Any questions?
I'm
Ms.
just
Tompkins.
wondering, do we clearly tell citizens if they choose to do the payment plan, like this is how much interest and this is what the interest will be?
Right. I believe there's a letter sent out to that property owner that would detail out what that would cost over time. They do receive a bill for that, and then at that time they can decide to pay all at once or over the installment plan. You would have anything?
As part of the required documents, we have to actually issue an installment assessment notice, which actually labels the specific amount of interest by state statute. So they do get a letter from us, and when the clerk's office does submit the final assessment, they give an amortization schedule showing the payments with assessment or with the interest rate if you decide to pay for it over that period of time.
Do we have any more questions? With that, we have a motion by Mr. Rigel and a second by Ms. Tompkins to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Request to recommend council approval to extend the existing contract with SEH for planning services through June 30th, 2024, presented by Steve Barg, City Administrator.
Thank you, Councilmember Varsho. Well, been on this road a few times. Ever since Stephen Wiley, former city planner, left back in October of 2022, we've not had a staff planner, been operating with contract services. We started right away with SEH. And Bryce Hembrook, as you know, former city planner, is our representative. So he's familiar with us. He's done a good job. We've continued with them quarterly ever since then. So we're kind of going on to what would be, I guess, maybe our sixth term or something of a 3-month contract with SEH. We are proposing that you continue that for another quarter at the same rate. That is $140 an hour for his position for the work he does, which could be anywhere from 6 to 12 hours a month. It kind of depends on the activity level, a little bit less during the winter months, a little bit more during the more busy months. He handles plan commission, conditional use permits, rezoning, all those types of things for us and some other planning issues as well. Note now, we are in the process discussing, Sarah and Carrie and I, and we'll be coming to you soon with a request to have a planner position posted once again. We're kind of tweaking a little bit some things with the job description and that kind of thing, but we'll be coming to you to get authorization to move forward. So it's very possible that before June 30th of 2024, we might have somebody on staff. We've been unsuccessful in the past. We're hopeful this time that we'll find a good candidate. But if that happens, then we don't have SEH up until June 30th, we don't pay them. It's a time and materials basis based on the hourly rate. If we started a new city planner on June 1st, if that were to happen, we wouldn't pay SEH for anything during the month of June. It just gives us the right for a certain amount to have his services at our disposal. So with that in mind, I would recommend that the council or the committee recommend council approval to authorize me to execute a contract from April 1st to June 30th with SEH.
Do we have a motion?
I move to approve this contract.
I'll second.
Motion by Ms. Tompkins, second by Mr. Rigel. Any questions? Mr. Rigel.
Okay. Once again, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask these questions, and I hate doing this. And if you haven't figured it out, I don't like talking that much in the first place. So right now, you said, it's about 6 hours of Mr. Hembrook's work at what 120? So we're talking about $600-ish bucks a week?
Well, it's 6 to 12 hours of service is what they're proposing.
Okay.
Truthfully, a typical month, he's probably worked for us around 9 or 10 hours. Our average monthly has been probably close to 5,000. And that brings up another issue. I know we've talked about the procurement policy here before. So, I mean, in a 12-month period, if we were to stay with them, theoretically, if we couldn't find anybody and we continued with this company through the end of the year, we still wouldn't hit the $25,000 mark. That's raised the concern about going up for further proposals. But yeah, we typically average maybe 9 or 10 hours a week with them.
Right, and I think you bring me to my next question here then, is that it sounds like there was going to be, if there hasn't been already, discussion about bringing on a full-time, correct me if I'm wrong, full-time planner to replace this. We're going to be paying more than $5,000 a month for that planner, aren't we?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, especially when you consider benefits. Yeah, this has definitely been a savings for us. Not that we are doing it because we want to. We'd like to have a planner on staff. We'd like to have had one on staff since October of 2022. But clearly, any time period we go with this contract is a savings over having a planner because we have all the the benefit costs that come along with it.
Right, and I think that is kind of answering or getting to the point I'm making here is that if right now we're getting a cost benefit of this, is there that much demand for work to get this, make this a full-time position? If we can get by with 5 to 6 hours and paying $5,000 a month, it almost seems to me like as much as I'd like to do it, once again, trying to realize what we have hanging over our heads here in the next couple of months, that seems, all in a perfect world, wonderful. But my fear is that right now we're in a position where we're reducing costs and we're going to be increasing them for something that we may or may not, and I don't know the answer to that, may or may not have that work or that demand for it.
No, wages and benefits with that position that we're talking about will be way more than $60,000 a year, which is what I'm estimating that the contract would be. But on the other hand, keep in mind that we're only doing the basics right now. I mean, we talk about things in the office here about updating the zoning code and working on other things, and we clearly don't have the time from this person to do that. He's basically doing plan commission and related items. He's not handling anywhere near the full depth and breadth of the position.
Yeah, I just want to add to that just a little bit. So he's doing a great job and, processing kind of planning applications as they come up and presenting at Planning Commission. But just one example that we're kind of doing right now, the Second Street redevelopment plan that's in development. We have consultants coming to meet with the community and do focus groups and that type of thing. And usually when you have an in-house staff planner, they're meeting with these people, they're getting to know the community, they're understanding what property owners want. They're kind of developing relationships and creating, kind of a presence in the community. And I think that development is very impactful. So as great as he's doing, kind of continuing to process applications and things like that, some of the really core economic development work really rests on those relationships and kind of creating that. And I think we are lacking that. I mean, I think that's something, bringing someone in and developing that, we're going to see the impact with business owners, community members, and things like that.
I think it's the difference between getting the basics done and actually doing the kind of proactive things that we need to be effective with some of the projects we have.
So I think I need to apologize now because I need to check myself. I got off topic there with that. So I apologize. I'm going to keep it to that. But I guess the only word of caution, if you will, is that when we do come looking for that planner question, the question I'm going to have right off the bat and be best answered ahead of time is, what do we gain out of making this full-time and increasing costs when we're in a position where any increase in cost, and here we're talking 50, 60 grand, is pretty dire. So I get it. In a perfect world, this is wonderful. Let's bring them on. But like I said, I'm going to want to see that. So when we do come, it's going to be best to have that prepared as to, we made it through October 22 to present with the current situation. What advantage do we get beyond that? So I'll leave it at that and I'll stop talking because I got off track.
Well, I think part of what Jennifer and I want to start down the road on April 9th is not just talking about, the debt and all these kind of things. We want to start planting the seed about what are the expectations of the elected officials here. In other words, we can do this, but here's what we're going to get done. If you want more done, it may take this, that kind of thing. So in other words, right now with a contract planner working for us 10 hours a week, he's keeping the ship afloat, clearly, and we're not drowning. But a lot of this is what Carrie's alluding to, a lot of the things that I think many of the people in this room would expect us to be doing with respect to some of these bigger projects, we're not able to pursue them until we have the proper staff. Right now we have Carrie, and we didn't even have her until 3 weeks ago. So it all depends what you're trying to accomplish.
Right, exactly. That's perfect. And I think it's going to be one of the things that not only I want to see, but I think the community as a whole is going to want to see that when we're going over this, saying, hey guys, we have to cut this program, that program, this one. Why are you going to have to hire this? We need to be able to say, this is why, and have concrete examples, not just my gut says. I'm not saying you said that, but I'm saying I don't want to be in that position where I get questioned by anyone. And I'm going, well, it feels nice. I want to be able to say, no, here are the reasons, and we're good to go. So I'll leave it at that.
No, got it, and I totally understand it.
Any other questions? Mr. Wagner.
Thank you. First of all, I don't disagree with or dispute the need for this position. I think this is an important position for us to have. And I think the benefit of having somebody on staff who can meet with the developers, meet with people, other consulting firms, I think that's a big deal, a real big deal. We have to have it, especially if we're going to move forward in any of the number of projects that we've got sitting on the shelf. We have a lot sitting on the shelf. We want to get it done. And to that end of getting it done, are you going to use a headhunter to try and find this position?
I don't think we've talked yet about recruitment. I know we're going
Well,
to
how do you-
we're going to be pretty aggressive. We've talked about maybe looking more into avenues and areas that we haven't before to try and get people maybe with I hate to say it this way, but maybe being a little bit more flexible in terms of the expectations of experience and education. Not that we're just going to take anybody off the street, but I think you're going to see us just in general in our city. Sarah's been a part of this, obviously, as the HR director, and others have too, recruiting from schools, looking for places we haven't looked at before. I don't know about a headhunter. We actually last year, or was it 2 years ago, when this first happened, Sarah, we looked for a firm, I think, to help us with another position, and they said that once you've tried a couple times, you're not sure if they help you, but we'll certainly talk about everything.
I think that what I used headhunter because I wasn't quite sure what you were going to do. But I know you're going to have to do something.
Yeah.
And the fact that this position has been left open as long as it has is really a black mark as far as I'm concerned. It's something that's got to be changed. I'd like to see you give us a deadline for the date that, not that you hire somebody, but the date that it starts hitting the street as approval. Because I'd like to see that. I'd like to see you and the rest of the staff totally committed to that project.
Believe me, I feel it too. And we did not bring Carrie on board for her to be doing day-to-day planning. I mean, we've got much higher aspirations for what she's going to be able to accomplish as the leader of that department. So totally on track with you. I think you'll see it in front of you very soon. But we're going to push hard to get somebody in that office. Absolutely. I'm totally, you and I have talked a little bit about how we got here. I think there's a question about why we didn't hire a planner or try to hire a planner with another run at it before we hired Carrie. But we're here now, and I think the reason was we wanted Carrie to be part of the selection process and rebuilding the staff. And she's here now, and we're ready.
Okay, just please commit yourself and tell us about it as to what date you're going to start advertising for it.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Yep.
Do we have any more questions? So with a motion by Ms. Tompkins and a second by Mr. Rigel to approve, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carried.
Oh, no.
Request to recommend council authorization to execute a new 3-month agreement with Cedar Corporation for the Economic Development Services through June 30th, 2024, presented by Steve Barg, City Administrator.
Thank you. Back in, I think right around the 1st of February, I did send out a request for qualifications, actually. It was an RFQ. I put RFP in the memo, I apologize. But got 7 firms who received it from me, and they're qualified. 4 of them responded and made proposals that they would be willing to look at being a temporary service provider for us for economic development services from April 1 through June 30th. And one of them was Cedar. The others were Redevelopment Resources, Vandewaal, who we're using for the West 2nd Street redevelopment plan, and Verbiker. And we had back on, I don't know, a week or so ago, we had a meeting with Carrie, Tom, Jennifer, me, Natasha, and Ed. So we had 6 of us between council and staff, and had a good discussion, reviewed all 4 proposals. What came from that is the thought that any of the firms probably can do the job. And some of them looked pretty intriguing what they were proposing, but they were longer term visions. And we wanted somebody who we knew was grabbed onto the idea that we would have them for the next 90 days to do some of the nuts and bolts of working with our existing projects, the developers, taking new inquiries and plugging them into opportunities for them to be entrepreneurs or to start businesses here. And it was felt by the team that staying with Cedar for that period of time would be our best move, with the understanding that the other 3 firms would definitely be encouraged to be considered as part of what might happen after that. Now, one of the things going on, and I think we've talked about this before, that Carrie's involved in, and Sarah and I am as well, to bring to you what we think as far as the economic development piece of this puzzle. We've got inspections. We're going to have a planner, and Carrie's overseeing the department. But do we want to have an economic development consulting firm on a long-term basis? Or do we want to get an economic development specialist staff position to be able to handle things right here? And I think the jury is out on that. I think we want to talk it over more, bring you a proposal, see what you think. So I told the 3 firms that I contacted and said, we're proposing Cedar, but please, again, stay engaged with us, because later in the spring, we might decide to go longer term with the firm. And if we do, we're going to be open to multiple providers, including you. So the recommendation for tonight is that this committee would recommend council approval of another 3-month agreement with Cedar for the period April 1 to June 30th at the current terms. And that would be a recommendation. I would take any questions.
Do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Mr. Eigel. Second by Ms. Tompkins. Any questions? Mr. Eigel? No?
No, for me, no. Surprise.
No?
No, not
questions?
yet.
I do like this. Josh Miller is a former city employee. He lives in Marshfield. He knows everything about this. It's comfortable for him. It's an easy transition for us. I really think that it's a good thing for the temporary move.
If I can add, Brian?
Yeah.
I think it's good for another reason. Carrie is in her first month. And, with everything we have going on with Weinbrenner and Daniel Homes and the various TIF districts and West 2nd Street, I think it'll be good continuity for all the conversations that Josh has been having with some of these people. And, as Carrie gets more acclimated to what we do and all the different activities and projects, if we end up changing on July 1st, so be it. At that point, she'll have a better understanding and a better working knowledge of what's going on. So I think it's a good move right now as well. He's very familiar with us. He's very familiar with the different projects going on. So thank you.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Reigel, second by Ms. Tompkins. All in favor? Oh, Mr. Wagner, do you have another question?
No, go ahead. Go ahead and vote. Go ahead.
Are you sure?
I'm sure. I'm not going to win it anyway.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 3-1. Number 13, suggested items for future agendas. Mr. Wagner.
Yes, there were some things we've been working on. And recently, the finance department has had an interface with what is supposed to be the audit committee. I'm the one who introduced and asked the council to provide for an audit committee. In the sense that the simplest model is that the auditor works for Steve and the city staff, but nobody works for the council to tell them what they've seen or what they've not seen in the audits. And but it's not working the way it's supposed to do. As a matter of fact, I'm disgusted that it has been, just in the past 2 weeks, heavily politicized. And basically, I'm going to, I met with our auditors today, had a great meeting with them. I think there is an alternative channel we can use, and I would like to present that to this board at their next meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Any other items for future agendas? Ms. Tompkins.
This will segue a bit into our April 9th meeting, but I would like us to come up with a plan for, are we going to fill the empty firefighter positions? Because in October, when we voted to fill one position, part of that motion was we were going to wait for further information about the ambulance service that potentially Essentia that was going to merge with Marshfield Clinic. That merger fell through. So it was almost like the motion was to pause on filling more, but we haven't addressed that. So we need to address those positions. And it might come up in the April 9th meeting, but I feel like we need to have a plan to address that. Whether we decide, we just can't let it stall. We need to make a decision about that. So I'm not sure if that would be the next Finance Budget Personnel Committee or whether we develop some sort of plan that we present when we talk about the budget. Thank you.
Mr. Barg, sure.
Thank you. I just want to add one item. It's not an item for future agenda. I probably could have mentioned it during citizen comments, but you brought up, I think, about a month ago, Natasha, that Eng had we've done some testing to see if people are getting into our system on, phishing emails and stuff. He did send a report out. I hope you got it. Hope others did as well. So we did respond to that concern. And if you have any questions as a follow-up, please contact our IT department. They are diligent about making sure that we're doing everything we can to avoid cyber attacks.
All right, do we have any other items for future agendas? With that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
Mr. Rigel, second by Ms. Tompkins, all in favor?
Aye.
Now we are adjourned.